Adam, I'm excited to speak to you about this. Now, from my understanding, you have a gym and you do not have a kids program, but you do have a specialty in CLA and ecological approach. So I'm very excited to hear about this.
Okay, so I do have a kids program.
You do?
I have a very large kids program.
Why in our messages did it say because you're not teaching the
I
kids
I
program?
don't yes.
That's what it is.
So I started the kids program with my brother
Fantastic.
in 2009.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
as
wow.
soon as as soon as I had a group of coaches that could take over, I stopped coaching kids.
Yeah.
Um my daughter was in that inaugural group. I think she was like 3 or 4.
Yeah, beautiful. And so then is she still training?
She actually wrestled through high school. Now she's in college, working in musical theater.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
What a change.
Yeah. Well, she's been a very well-rounded uh, kid, which I think we'll talk about at some point, right?
Yes.
The idea of being well-rounded. Um, and so the kids program is run very similarly to my adult program in the sense that it is fully ecological driven. Um, but I definitely want to pick your brain with some ideas and give you an idea of some things we do and just sort of meld our minds a little bit.
100%. Okay, so let's re-dive in here.
Okay.
Let's start again because you have a beautiful kids program, but it's not you running the kids program. So tell me a little bit about then. It's 2009 and you are starting your kids program. What
Right.
made you how did you get into this? What made you decide? Because I'm assuming you weren't doing CLA in 2009.
Okay. So it's interesting. So we were definitely not doing CLA in 2009, but I come from an organization called SBG,
Hmm.
and SBG has always been aliveness was the core principle of SBG, and aliveness maps pretty well onto an ecological idea. So, a lot of us have been exploring some ecological ideas, and I think all coaches explore the CLA without ever knowing sort of why or what, um, and especially not knowing why certain things worked or why certain things were better than other things. So when we started the kids program, we just tried to run it very similarly to the adults in the sense that most of the work was done alive. Um, I didn't know what I was doing, so it ended up being a lot of fun games, a lot of running around, a lot of tag, um, different things like that. Over the years, the organization actually created a kids program, um, which was a mixture of alive and dead. Um,
Hmm.
but it also incorporated a lot of components of life skills and things outside of the gym, things to make kids well rounded. And
Beautiful.
then as I started to understand more about the ecological approach in CLA for adults, I just asked my kids coaches just go all in. You know, just you can use whatever framework we're using, but over time, I would just like it to be 100% alive.
Yeah. And how
And
have you
so,
found that?
um,
Like,
it is a learning process.
mm,
It is a learning process. So I would say it's about 3 years since the whole gym, every program. The gym is an MMA and a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school.
yeah.
Um, I've been coaching the gym has been around for about 25 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah, we have about over 400 members. Um, it is probably one of the larger, more successful gyms in especially the Southeast, but probably anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but I would like the kids program to be better.
Yeah.
And I would like to help my coaches. So you can't just watch me coach adult classes and then just do that with kids, right? And so I want to go back and forth and help each other sort of help me whittle down what are the really core components of ecological dynamics in the CLA that apply for kids.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
100%. And I think that there's probably a lot of coaches that are going to benefit from this conversation, but myself included, because I'm very interested in the fact that you've built a very successful and large gym based on this approach and based on, live movements. And I think that our gym is nearly 2 years old and we have just over 100 members. So we're pretty small in comparison.
Congratulations. Yeah, but
Thank
that's
you.
you
It's
have to have
getting
100 members
there.
before you, right? You have to have 100 before you can have 200 before you can have 500.
100%. And I think that at the moment, we're going through this stage where we're looking to be able to step back ourselves as the main people sort of within the business and looking at those people who would be able to step in coaching roles. Now, we have some assistant coaches and things like that. But I guess when you said, when you went all in with the idea of CLA and your kids' coaches and things like that, I guess it's really helping them to understand what they're doing in a way without micromanaging, I suppose is a good way to put it, because each coach is going to bring something unique to the situation and each coach is going to be able to understand things in a different way. And there's no right or wrong. It's really just trying to explore how each coach is able to do things. So I'm interested in understanding this with you at the moment. I would love to know, how were you able to create the freedom for your assistant coaches to really step into that role when they're still learning CLA themselves? Like, did you provide resources? Did you get them to watch you? Again, like we know training adults is completely different, but were you providing any insight into how you wanted them to do that?
All right. So my gym we have a core coaching instructor program, or our core, we call it coaching candidate course.
Mhm.
And it is a 2-day program that I run either once or twice a year for anyone that wants to be a coach. And it focuses mostly on culture and environment, right? Because everything is built on culture and environment. And then there are some pieces on presentation and methodology and things like that. So the the new coaches get an idea of how the CLA, how ecological stuff works at a very broad level. And then I just give them some basic rules. And some of those rules are as simple as your first job is retention, right? Every coach's first job is retention. No one, no kid, no adult can get good unless they're here.
Correct. Yeah.
So, retention. Now, what does retention look like for kids or adults? Number one is fun. So I said, okay, in your practice design, start with fun. And that's adults and kids. Um, Safety, right? We have to be, that's important in a, especially in a live environment, safety becomes paramount. So I gave them I nudged them towards some of those things: fun, safety, and I wanted everything based on being alive.
Yeah.
Now, we both know that different age kids need some different focuses, some different, and that's something I want to pick your brain about when we get to it in a second, because I have some ideas I want to run by you.
Okay.
Um, but I asked them to keep it fun, keep it moving, keep it alive, keep it safe, and realize that they are not adults. So anything that we do in the adult class, they could use that as a framework, but it has to be completely reevaluated before it's given to the kids. And then, like ecological approach, I said, go out there and fail, go out there, and if they're having fun, see, I really don't care if they like learn to grapple
Yes.
in right on a long enough time scale. I'd like them to learn how to grapple,
Yeah.
but I don't. That doesn't mean anything on a micro level to me. Like, I don't care if they know how to do an arm bar. I don't care if they know how to do this. I don't care if they know how to do that. I just want to see them engaging with another body. And over time, I'd like to see that look like what we call grappling, if that makes sense.
100%. I think that that's something that, like I've said previously before on other podcasts and things, is that sometimes we sit on social media and we see grappling and we see these kids who are, between the ages of 6 and 10 and they're killing it. Like, hands up, they're amazing at what they do.
Amazing.
And then we look at it as coaches and we go, oh my God, my kid's class doesn't look like that. Or, oh, my kids don't know how to do an armbar like that. And then you start to panic because you're like, okay, I'm not doing enough. And how do I get them to do this? And then I'm going to show them more details. And it's really easy to go into this slippery slope where you are then comparing your coaching to something that is completely not actually what your kids' program should be about. Because yes, those kids are incredible, but they're on a completely different journey. They're probably training 6 days a week and doing some crazy stuff that when you're a coach or a gym owner, for retention, you want your kids to have fun, because if they're not having fun, they're not going to want to come back. So I completely agree with that. Really, really agree with that. And so then I'd like to know a little bit about, now I know you've got some questions for me. I'd really like to know then, how do you split your age groups with your kids? Like, you've got a pretty big kids program. So how do you split that between their needs?
All right, so don't quote me on the ages, but we run three different age groups. We have
Mhm.
the the youngest age group, which is like 3.5 to something, and the cutoff ages are, we have a little leeway there because we know some kids mature mentally or physically faster or slower, and so we always want to be able to honor that. Then we have the middle age group. Let's say it's up to 10 years old, something like that, 6 to 10, 6 to 9, and then the older kids, 10 to 13, 14. We have some smaller, younger teenagers in there before they move up into the adult program.
Yeah. And at what point do you look at your older teenagers and go, okay, you're ready, like you need to go into my adults program now? What's the sort of signs for you?
So some of them I asked to do both, and they
Yep.
almost become, in the kids program, they almost become assistant coaches.
Yeah, cool.
And then if they do that, they've sort of earned, they earn the right to train with the adults. Some of it's a mental or physical maturity. Like, I have a 16-year-old kid now who's just started in my adult MMA class, and last night he was on the mat with my pros and amateurs. Now, I don't allow head contact for
Mhm.
teenagers in my gym. I don't allow head contact for children in the gym, and 17 is sort of where I'll discuss it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, we've seen teenagers that are very mature. We've seen teenagers that are less mature mentally, physically. I just want to make sure. I was talking about this recently about in a gym that we have to be really careful that especially in the ecological approach, we have to make sure that 50% of the students aren't bored and 50% aren't frustrated, which
Yeah.
means 100% of the students aren't being served. So I think with teenagers, we take it on a case by case basis that what is the right place for them. And I think the assistant coaching gives them a different focus in the kids program so they're not bored. And
Mhm.
then we can move them into the adult program. And if we have a couple of them, they can work together. So it's not really an issue. They don't have to sit and pay attention because we're not doing that. And so I think it's easier to bring younger, teenagers up into the adult program.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the way that you provide that leeway, even before you were saying, when you've got kids that are sort of that 5, 6, or between that age range, creating that leeway, because we have to understand again that, yeah, kids are different sizes, they develop differently, they mature differently. So it doesn't have to be like you are 5 years old now, you have to go into the next class. Like, it really should be intuitive and it should be specifically for the individual child rather than this strict age range of things because, you're going to chuck a kid into an age group. Imagine if you had like your 15-year-old and they weren't ready for the adults, but you were like, well, my class is only to 14. Sorry, bud, off you go. Like, it's just not going to work like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it doesn't have to be just physical or mental maturity. I think
Mm.
if they're mentally mature enough, we can usually partner pair them the right way in the adult. I have adult students who are small. I have female students who are small. So it's not like we don't end up with all kinds of shapes and sizes as adults anyway. And so if they're mentally ready for it, then I'm happy to. And again, a lot of them I like to do both and um I hesitate a little bit more. Now, luckily I have a women's program, and so I'm okay putting a 13-year-old girl in my women's only classes where I won't put them in the co-ed class yet,
Yeah.
just because I don't want them necessarily rolling with adult men and things like that, just for safety issues and cultural issues and things like that.
And being comfortable too, it's a lot for
Totally
a
comfortable,
13-year-old girl to be put in a
for
situation
sure.
where I mean, even for me sometimes when you got someone who's sort of 100 kilos sitting on top of you and you're like, all right, what am I going to do here? Like,
Right. And so we have a very large women's program, and
mhm.
there are two women's only classes each week, and they're coached by women. I've brought up some female black belts over the length of the time we've been here. So I have two female black belts running that program. And when women are ready to go into the co-ed classes, they do. And sometimes there are women in the co-ed classes that are just training together until they're comfortable. And I don't want to rush anyone into anything. I'd like on a long enough time scale, I'd like them to train with everybody, but there's no
Mhm.
reason to rush anyone into anything. This is a long process. Um, and one of the really important things, like we said, with safety for kids or adults is partner pairing. And so, we have to I'm sorry, allergy season here.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so we have two rules for in my program as a whole is that you can always say no to anyone that wants to roll with you, and you can always say stop for any possible reason.
Mm.
So I think when you have a culture like that, then people feel more comfortable either saying no, or if they know that they can stop when they're uncomfortable, that they're willing to take more risks.
That's fabulous. And it's so important, particularly when we're using things like CLA, because it is a live environment and your bodies move in ways, drilling is obviously a bit more set standard, you know what to expect. But when you are getting into those live environments, things can happen pretty quick, or the intensity can change quite quickly. You both start ramping things up a little bit. Or partner sizing is so big, like you've said. Being able to partner people that are going to be able to help each other actually achieve the outcome that we're looking for. Because sometimes when you've got someone who is so much bigger or so much more advanced than someone else, it really can be quite challenging. Now, in our gym at the moment, we sometimes run into this issue because we don't have such a large program yet. We've probably got actually most of our gym is entirely kids. I think we've got like 80 kids out of the 100 and
Oh,
something that we have.
wow.
Yeah, so it is mainly a kids gym at this point, but that's our focus. But
Do you get a
sometimes
lot of their parents? Do you get their parents starting to get involved?
yeah, most of the people that we have that are adults usually are the parents, or
Right. Nice.
they know that we do CLA and that's particularly what they're looking for. So we don't push our adults program that much. It's kind of we even at one point looked at just doing a kids only gym. I have a friend in Nevada somewhere. I always get it wrong, and he has a kids only gym. And I was like, oh, I
Really?
love, yeah, and I love this idea. But then I got to the point where I was like, but what happens when they become an adult? Where do they go?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, we'll keep our adults program, but we'll just keep it small. But the kids is, everything for us. We love that. But again, yeah, if you've got this mismatched sizing, it can sometimes be challenging. Now, I know that we would then add different constraints or change the games in a way that would support both players. But how do you manage something like that?
So if we're talking about adults, the idea is that scaling and proper scaling fixes most problems. And so we might have each person scaled slightly differently, where one side has more difficult objectives and one side has more easily attainable objectives. One thing that I picked up from Greg, who you interviewed recently, was the idea of changing time scales. So where you had to accomplish maybe three easily accomplished things before you can attack the bigger thing. And so that allows more of a time. So people don't just immediately get like, smashed.
Yeah.
And so there's more time to play and there's more time to explore, because that's really what we're trying to do, time on task.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can adjust the time scale, that's another way that we can sort of scale it when we have different. I think it's important that if it's upper belts or more experienced people working with less experienced people, that they have to give back a little bit, if that makes sense. Like one of the things we say is we have a culture of care.
Mm-hmm.
And so your own personal growth is important, but the growth of everyone around you is equally as important. And and
100%.
so and so it's hard because we things are either alive or they're dead.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. More experienced people can do it. Less experienced people can't make those adjustments. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where we really have to scale things properly. We have to adjust. So, as an example, we might have the less experienced person start closer to the goal and the more experienced person start further from the goal.
Yeah.
And so if we're doing like escapes, for instance, the person on bottom might start where they're blocking a crossface, they're on their side, like they're pretty close to the goal. Where the more experienced person is starting flat on their back, the person on top has head and arm control, like they're further away from their goal.
Yeah.
So it makes people work at their own skill level. If that you don't have a choice, then that's something you could definitely do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I really love the idea of the sort of the three-step little challenges or whatever it is before they have to achieve their goal. And we use that quite a bit in the adults class. Things like, you've got to get knee on belly 2 times, one on each side before you're then able to achieve the outcome or whatever it is in particular. But with the kids, I like to try and talk to them about if I've got someone who's brand new, I think this happened this week actually. I had someone who's been training for about a year and I had someone who's brand new and I was like, okay, how am I gonna make this work so they both actually get something out of this? But as soon as I framed it as something as, hey, like I know that you've been training a long time and you know a lot more of jiu-jitsu than my new friend does. So this is an opportunity for you to be the leader. I really want you to take control here. And if you see like they're struggling a little bit, you can help them out, talk them through things. And even though maybe they didn't maybe the technical skill of jiu-jitsu or whatever it wasn't the focus of the class for that particular child. They did have a focus of using confidence, speaking clearly, helping somebody else. And I think that is more important than jiu-jitsu, the actual skill is being a good person and being able to help someone and using the social cues to recognize when someone needs help. Because sometimes our little kids get in a position where it's like one person's really stuck. The person's on bottom, they're stuck, they can't get out. You can see they're struggling. And the person on top's completely oblivious. They're just like, yeah, I'm crushing it. I got my goal. And it's like, okay, So I'll often then stop them and just be like, hey, are you okay on the bottom? And they'll be like, I'm stuck. The person's really heavy. And the person on top's like, oh, sorry, didn't, whoops. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe can you help them out? What could they do on the bottom to try and get out of here? Like, what do you think would be a good idea? How could they move their bodies? And so then it kind of removes that need for me to give a cue or to give an actual focus, but it creates that peer learning environment. And also, the top player becomes more socially aware of actually what's going on around them. They're not just thinking of themselves, which is a natural thing. Kids, that is 100%
Sure.
what kids do. But I love the idea every time at the end of my class, I'm like, guys, you can't do jiu-jitsu by yourself. So it's really
Right.
hard to do jiu-jitsu alone. You need someone. So look after your training partners, help them out if they see that they're struggling, because otherwise it's going to be very lonely training by yourself.
So
So,
now, how do you balance that with the idea of something is alive or it's not? Now, I get what you said
mm,
about being a good person, being a good citizen, like that. I get that completely. And I get that, like we're talking about, they'll learn to grapple eventually. Like it
mm,
doesn't, none of it has to be today, none of it has to be day one. But how do you balance that idea, right? Because, like I say, and I preach it in my adult program, especially, it's alive or it's not.
mm,
Now, there are ways to modify our behavior on either side. Either I'm doing that or they're doing it. I allow a lot of room for autonomy and self scaling. I don't know if
mm.
you do that with the kids, but I'm sure you have some ideas on that. But how do you, because you said letting them, right? And so as soon as you say letting them,
Yeah, 100%. So I think that it comes down to how I set, again, the constraints or something. So I might modify the goal slightly. So say we're doing like that game on the bottom where it's just like, say it's just the person on the bottom's goal is to be able to get legs in front or reverse. And I know that that person on the bottom is going to really struggle because the person on the top is going to sit inside control and they're going to hold that chest to chest for as long as they possibly can. So, and I know that that's not going to give one, the person on the top is not really going to be able to, they're not going to get that much out of it, really. They're going to be stuck there. So I like to then set the goal slightly differently. So I might say, okay, person on the top, I actually want you to then explore which chest to chest you like the best. So I don't want you staying in the same position for more than, say, 10 seconds or 20 seconds, whatever the time is. I actually just really want you going between, mount position, side control, north, south, whatever it is that you like, finding something that you're like, oh, this is good pinning. I like this one. And then change it. So finding a different one. And I find that then once that dynamic is created where the person is moving rather than just really holding on, the
right,
bottom person is able to then move better because they're then able to achieve their goal a little bit more. When the person on the top is a bit stagnant and stale or really holding it, it becomes very challenging for that smaller person or the person who's just started. I did that one quite a bit this week. And it was interesting to hear which ones they liked best. Everyone had like a different place that they were like, I really liked this pinning. This one I got, the other person won when I got here, or it was pretty cool.
so it's funny you say that because for my adults, we did escapes last week. And
Yep.
one of the games that I played right off the rip was start and cross side. Your goal on top is to lock your hands on each side. And
Yep.
then once you lock your hands on each side, then you can mount.
Cool.
And so, because it is easier to escape when the person on top is moving,
Yeah.
then that allowed for exploration of escaping during transitions, escaping transitions to mount, and escaping mount as well. So now we're escaping cross side or escaping mount, and sometimes one of those is easier than the other.
Yeah.
And so it's a very similar idea.
Yeah, it is. And I think that
Okay, so
everyone,
this
go, hit me.
no, go ahead, please.
All I was going to say was like every child comes up with such a different way that they like to escape. Like I have some kids that they would prefer to try and escape mount than they would like a side control position because they prefer the idea of, lifting the hips or whatever it is that they like to do to be able to get it. They feel confident there. So sometimes, and that's where I have to be like, okay, let's have a little think about.
It leads me to a question because you're talking about pinning. So I have this theory about kids, and I'd love your uh, thoughts on it.
Mm,
And the idea is that the younger kids, and I don't know what age I'm speaking about, so I'm just going to say younger and older,
yeah.
that the younger kids will enjoy grappling activities that have more movement base to them, that are more free flowing. So
Mm,
more standing, grappling and gripping, more maybe turtle, more open guard type stuff.
mm,
And then as they get older, introduce more connected type grappling. So the mounting, the pinning, the close guard, maybe close guard. I don't know where that one sits, but does
mm.
that make sense? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think that something that I say to parents when they first bring their young children in, so say 4 to 7 is generally that age range that I see this, is their whole life they've been told to keep their hands to themselves. You don't touch other people, you don't touch things. You ask, you go to school and it's like, keep your hands off, guys. Or you ask a hug for your friends or whatever it is. And then we put them on the mat and we're like, right, sit on top of each other. And they're like, what? You want me to? And they kind of look at you like, what do you mean? And so when I say to families, they'll often be like, oh, it's like they didn't really want to touch the person, but when they're at home, they wrestle me all the time. And I'm like, yeah, because it's a safe space and they're your family and they know you and that's something that you do at home and it's normal. But when we have these social, expectations of you don't just walk up and wrestle someone, all of a sudden you're doing that to someone and it's a bit unnatural. And even as adults, when you start, especially with the females, I notice it, they giggle a lot. They'll come in on their
Right.
first class and they giggle and they're laughing because it's a bit weird. And then all of a sudden it's like something clicks and they're like, oh no, it's not actually it. And then they train and they have fun. Of course, they still giggle. I still laugh all the time. But I see that with kids in this age range. And so I think that probably has part of it to do with it. The second part is that I don't think they understand the concept of resistance that much at that age range yet. So when they're playing games where they're standing and they've both got their arms out like this and they're trying to lift a leg up and it's very dynamic. So they're like, this is really fun and I'm moving a lot. But then when you kind of put them down on the ground and they're a bit more stuck, it's the person doesn't really hold the resistance for that long. You'll see them kind of flop over onto the ground or they don't understand how to work their bodies with one another at that point. So it's not that fun because
Right.
it's not that fun. Everyone wants to stand up and like lift a leg or try and tag a knee or even like back control, I find from standing. Like they enjoy those things a bit more because I think they're a bit more fast paced. Whereas once the kids get a bit older and they start to understand the concepts of grappling, like, your pinning and things like that, they realize that there's a goal to it. And they're like, oh, okay, now I enjoy this because I'm winning or there's a goal or whatever. Little kids are just like, I just want to run. I reckon if I put a class on and I was like, guys, we're just going to spend the next half an hour running, be the best class they've ever had.
Right.
Wouldn't teach a
Sure.
single thing.
No, it makes sense. And I think I've seen that when I'm watching when they try and do a game that's outside of those uh, areas or outside of those constraints, that
Mm,
the kids just look uncomfortable. Like, I think young kids don't want someone sitting on their chest. They don't want someone. They don't
yeah.
understand it. It feels uncomfortable. So I wonder if when we put these curricula together for kids, we should gear the younger kids more, because I know everyone wants the kids to learn all of grappling, but all of grappling is still contained within all that movement and stuff, right? We put the constraints that grappling looks a certain way,
Yeah.
and then we want to teach towards that. But when kids grapple, it's very rolling, it's very grabbing, it's very, there's a lot of crawling, and there's a lot of turtle, and there's a lot of, kicking people away with your legs, like. And so I wonder if maybe we should be looking at grappling from the direction of the kid and not the direction of the sport, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And then let them age into certain positions almost, or situations, things like that.
Yeah,
What do you think about
definitely.
that?
Definitely, definitely. Like I have said to families when they come, like you've got a kid who's 4 years old and maybe they've got a sibling who's 10, just for example. And the 4 year old comes in and they are playing the game and they can't even sit still to even hear the short instruction that I'm giving. And they see the other kids sitting or they see the other kids listening or whatever. And then the parent will be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like my child didn't sit or they didn't listen or they didn't do this or they didn't do that. I'd be like, well, have they gone to kindy before? And they're like, oh, no. Do you take them to a play group? No. Have they ever been asked to sit and listen before? Oh, no. I'm like, so why are you expecting them to be able to do that? If I can teach them in the next month to be able to sit with their legs crossed for 1 minute while I give an instruction, to me, that's a win. That's like, cool,
Right.
you are killing it. But I think sometimes then they'll see their sibling in the older class who's able to do a lot more, sit for longer, or even just their bodies move differently. And so 100% when we set these games or we set your curriculum or the expectations of what you're wanting, really look outside of what the skill is. Yeah, okay, you want someone to be able to pin someone down. That's awesome. But are they able to sit and listen first? Are they able to jump on the mats and talk to their friends first? Do they feel comfortable? Do they feel confident? And I think those things are more important for this younger age group than the games that we play. But when I set the games that we play, I do play the whole game. Um, I do pinning games and things like that with my kids, even at 4. But do they pin for that long? No. Do they, are they able to hold things or escape things in the same way that you would in an older kids class? No. But I think that I don't set the game for long, so I'll set time constraints where I'll be like, okay, 20 seconds. All right, you've only, and they kind of, they don't know the concept of time either. But like,
Right.
okay, you've only got 20 seconds. Give it everything you've got in that 20 seconds. And now you'll see them. They start trying to move more. They're going really hard. They're trying to get out of there. And then after 20 seconds, they switch, regardless of whether the outcome was achieved. I think if we try and force them to meet the outcome without setting a time, it can become a bit harder. And that's when, they start to get uncomfortable. They start to lose that interest because it's hard. Like, that's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you do anything where they use the instructor as a body?
With the kids?
Yeah, so like Crazy Horse was a game everyone plays where the kid gets
Yeah.
on an instructor's back and the instructor tries to shake them off. Things like that. Do you play anything like that?
Mm, I jump in for certain things. So, say, like this week, I did a King of the Mat style thing with my 4 to 5s. Now, that sounds like a lot because
Okay.
that's like, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go at the beginning of the week. So I sat them down and I was like, I only play this game with like my older kids, but you guys have been doing so well. I think that you might be ready for it. And like, regardless of if they were or not, I don't know. But they smashed it, man. They're doing so much better than even my 6 to 9s at the moment. And so what happened was I got myself in the middle and I put two others on either side of me. So then I was like, okay, the goal is just to lift up the leg. So it wasn't like anything that they hadn't done throughout the week, but it gave them a chance to go with different partners. But I did jump in for that. So
Okay.
I wanted to jump in to be able to see how they were doing it, like feeling how they're doing it rather than me just observing. I think sometimes it's nice to actually jump in and feel the way that the kids are grabbing or feel the way that they're moving, so that I know where they're at. And each kid goes differently. Do I do those kinds of games where it's like, okay, 10 of you are on the wall and I'm in the middle and you've got to, no, because
Right.
I don't like kids sitting and not engaging in my class.
Sure. I don't either. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes I even use a kid for the demonstration. I'll choose a kid and be like, okay, you're going to do the demo with me or something like that.
Right.
But I don't do those. I'm in the middle and you guys sit on the wall and then you
Yeah.
jump in with me.
Well, we usually have, we keep a little bit of a higher instructor to kid ratio. So
Yes,
that's why I was wondering. So I think, we might have 10 kids and three coaches on the mat
beautiful. Yeah,
thing because
we do the
we have a
exact
lot of
same.
assistants. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that when you're using the live environment, you need to have that higher instruction ratio
Yeah.
because things can just happen so quickly. And
Oh, yeah.
it's never, it just, all it takes is one knee just gets reaped this way. And I'll never be like, oh my God, stop. Like, I'm not going to panic them. I'll just be like, okay, pause. And I'll just move that knee back. That's it. I don't say anything. I just move it back and they keep
Right.
going. There's no point in me spending a minute telling them what reaping is because they're not going to know.
Right. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your feelings on sort of general movement skills? So, you know,
Mm,
do you, because it is out of context, but children do not have that sort of movement education or movement history that we want them to build. What do you think about including that in your program?
this is an interesting one. This is something that I've been looking at because I don't traditional warm up. There's no
Right?
shrimping, there's no rolls, there's no,
Yeah.
but I would say that those are movement patterns. There's still movement patterns that are
So
there.
let's just to avoid, let's ignore movements that look like we're trying to mimic grappling. So let's
Correct.
talk about like rolling, cartwheels, handsprings. Like I know you've read long-term athletic development and all
Yeah.
those things. And so early in that idea, there's a large focus on tumbling and rolling and things like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do include it in my classes. It's not set in a way that is rigid or like you have to do this in your warm up or anything like
Right.
that. Sometimes it'll be something just like an animal movement. Like I'll be like, okay, let's do like a gorilla where you've got your hands
Mm,
on your mat, you've got to move your legs, like or frog jump or whatever. But I don't feel that specialized in this particular area. And I've been talking to people about this because I feel like I need to do more with this. I feel like general movement patterns are so important, but I don't know how to incorporate it in a way that is either like a game or something that doesn't feel rigid. Like, okay, guys, we're going to do squats. I don't know. There's certain
No, I,
things.
I I understand. Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. It's when you come from the world that we're talking about, context is
Mm,
king, right?
mm.
But we are talking about kids and we are talking about trying to help them build a long-term ability to move and a movement vocabulary.
Yeah.
So I can see a value in rolling forwards, backwards, cartwheels. Like, and we
Yeah.
know with adults, if you take a room full of adults and you say, okay, we're going to cartwheel up the mat, the adults that can do cartwheels are generally ones that are better athletes than the ones that can't.
Mm. Yeah,
And
100%.
it's I don't know if it's chicken or the egg, but I think we if we can help our kids get a jump start on being able to move, then I
Yeah.
think, but I don't know how to incorporate it either because you don't want to line up and
Yeah, and
so
that's the balance that I'm trying to find at the moment myself. I've been speaking to Sebastian from Yoga for BJJ.
okay,
I've been talking to him a little bit here and there about creating like movement patterns that could be used as warm-ups. So incorporating those movements without it feeling like it's just doing the movement for the sake of doing the movement. And we haven't gotten too much into that, but I'm interested in how he would do it from like a yoga perspective.
right,
So things like something that I do, and I use the language 100% is we play a game that is like musical statues. Say for the really little ones, it's like musical statues. And they run, they dance, they do whatever they want at the beginning of the class, and when the music stops, they have to freeze. Now, that might seem really, really simple, but the freezing is using listening, so it's forcing them to be able to focus on, yes, what they're doing, but also listening to what's happening outside of themselves. Freezing means that they're actually having to pause their bodies and be still within the moment and watch how their body moves when they freeze. And then I'll give them something simple. I use the word sprawl. I use the word break fall. I use the word like double leg. But I created that space for them to be able to know what that means. Like I didn't just walk them in and be like, okay, sprawl, because you're not going to know what that is. So once we then do that, I'll be like, okay, freeze. All right, sprawl. And they'll do like a little sprawl. So that's something that I do as like a way to warm up their bodies. And then, if I'm doing that particular thing, and say, for example, I'm saying the word sprawl, usually then the class is somehow related to the movement that I'm actually doing in my warm ups. So I think that that's an important connection. I don't want my like warm up or my games that I start my class with to not necessarily be related to the skill that I'm trying to emerge within the class. So if I'm just playing bull rush for the sake of playing bull rush, for me, that's not as effective as it could be, if that makes sense.
no, it makes sense. I mean,
Mm,
I could see a benefit, and I could also see how it could become, it could lead us down some wrong paths. So, um,
mm,
and there are no rules in what we're doing other than, we want them to have fun, we want them to stay, we want them to come back, and we'd like to do that in as an alive environment as we can. But
yeah,
obviously, there are kids, there are students, so we have that leeway. Um, I'm just trying to think, I don't about. I'm trying to think about this in a long-term athletic development idea
yeah,
as much as a just a grappling idea because I do want our kids to also do other sports and I do want you know I want them to play other sports and come back to grapple and play other sports and come back. And I want that all to sort of work together,
yeah,
and so I'd like parents to be happy that their kid that the grappling is contributing something to the kids' other endeavors and then vice versa.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the idea of being a generalist like and you started the conversation with those kids who are they're already specialists in jujitsu, and that's great. I don't begrudge them. I wonder how many of those kids will stay on the mats for their whole life. Whereas, I like when our kids go out and they play soccer for the season and then they play basketball but we have this long-term relationship with grappling, but we have this long-term relationship with the kid also.
mm,
And so I want them to also just be able to do all the things they want to do.
yeah. This is
And so I want to make sure we're contributing to that.
Yeah, 100%. This is such a big thing at the moment. This idea of specialization and the idea of kids playing other sports or engaging in other activities. and it can go either way. Now, I openly can say that when I first opened the gym, we had many kids come from other gyms that were comp kids. They competed regularly. Their kids had Instagram profiles. They were pretty heavy duty. That was what they had. Now, that was a lot of pressure, actually. And we started to
That was a lot of
steer.
pressure on you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
huge. Because they've come from another gym and they've come to us because they want us to make their kid good. And so then we weren't drilling. So they've come from gyms who
right.
were drilling techniques and they were, sometimes we would get a comment like, oh, they can hold a position really well, but like can you just give them a bit more detail on how to finish that armbar? I was like, well, no, because they know how to finish an armbar, but they're not going to get it every time because it's a live environment. They know what to do. Like if you sat them down and said, "What are the concepts you need to remember for an armbar?" They know. It's just that it's a live environment and they're not going to get it all the time. And that's something that parents didn't understand. And
Right,
so thankfully, actually, a lot of those families have moved on to different environments that are more suited for their needs, and that's completely fine. Everyone needs to be able to do what works for them in that environment. But it released a lot of pressure for us. And so what happened was we found ourselves in this hole of specialization. And these kids weren't playing other sports. They were literally training all day, every day. They liked it, but it didn't sit well for us. And we were like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Of course we'll do it. And it's nice when you see them winning and it's like, oh yeah, our kids are amazing. Of course they're amazing. They're training like ridiculous hours throughout the week and amounts of days. But it didn't agree with it. And
right.
so the more that I've spoken to people, yourself, Greg, Dr. Jarrell Garcia, all these people, that I'm like, it aligns better for us to not encourage that specialization. And part of the reason these families moved on was because we weren't willing to encourage that anymore. And so that's what happened, and that's fine. But specialization, it just, kids need to do other sports. They need to do other things. And our Monday class last week, funnily enough, our Monday class was dead. It was like 4 kids there. And I was like, where is everyone? Why is this class is usually really busy? What's happened? And then one of the kids is like, they're playing Oz tag, which is kind of like football, but you grab a tag off the back of their,
Flag,
it's a,
right. Flag football here.
yeah, like that. And I was like, oh, that explains it because there's now like 10 kids that are not in the class today because they're doing OzTag. But that doesn't upset me. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, how cool. They've even had a little team or they're playing together, they're versing each other in a whole different sport. And I love that. I think that's lovely.
Yeah. We try and stay involved even when the kids are doing other sports. We'll try and go, our coaches will go watch them and cheer them on. We
Oh,
encourage
that's lovely.
that. I know, business wise, at first it's scary, right?
Mm,
Because you sign up a kid and then in your head, you want this kid to be a member of the gym forever. And then sometimes we're like, all right, we're going to take off. We need to put our membership on hold for 3 months because we're going to play travel football or travel soccer.
mm,
But I think if we keep good relationships and we encourage those things, then they come back. They come back between seasons. They come back for the long haul. And I'd rather that than a kid burn out and then the parent says, well, they just don't want to do jujitsu anymore. They
yeah.
want to do other things. Well, I think if they intersperse other things, then I think they will continue to do all those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, and then so
Yeah.
and I think the evidence is really clear on kids' long-term success being generalists until some certain age when then they can decide. But even the best athletes in America that play college football, college basketball, they played two or three or four sports in high school,
Yeah,
right? So I think it's good for them to do this. So yeah, and I think the flip side is you have to decide what your culture, your environment is. And so if you have one or two kids and one or two parents who are just gung ho and they are trying to push your program in a direction, like we've had parents who want their kids to be world jiu-jitsu champions at 8 or 10 years old, and they want
mm,
to film the kids training and they want to be on Instagram and they want sponsors, and that just doesn't sit. That's not part of our culture or our environment.
yeah,
And so anything that hurts your culture, your environment, it has to be removed.
100%. And I think that that was something, I mean, your gym has been running for a very long time, and I'm sure that you have an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to business sides of things as well. So for us that had just started within 2 years, we were like, "Oh, okay, like, okay, yep, yep, yep." And then all of a sudden it was like, actually, what are we doing? This doesn't align with us. This isn't what
Right.
we set. No. And then that's when things, started to change. And for the better, because now yeah, we have the culture exactly the way we would like it to be. And the kids are having fun and there's not that pressure and there's not that, toxic environment of certain behaviors from parents and things like that. It's really a much nicer place for all my families to be. And, but I like now, how do you work this? Because as a business owner, now we're in Australia, we don't have seasons. We don't have the summer season. It's literally just jiu-jitsu runs all year.
Right.
And
We
our
run all year.
holidays, yeah, our holidays is like every 12 weeks, the kids get 2 weeks off school. And then
Okay.
at Christmas, because it's our summer, that's when they have 8 weeks off. So I know some gyms pause memberships like that, like you were saying, or they do seasons where they actually only enroll their kids within programs for a certain amount of time, or they have the whole year. How do you do it?
Okay. So I am not qualified to talk about business. I have set up my environment in a very specific way. My younger brother, Rory Singer, and my general manager, Luke Federico, run the business. We have a
Oh,
full-time
God, love them.
staff. We have outside people that do our advertising and our marketing, and I don't involve myself in any of that. So those are not questions, and my brother would be happy to answer those questions for
Yeah.
you.
Do you know what? I love that
What
you've got to that
I
point.
Yeah, well, I have a day job. I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I am a
Mhm.
bioengineer by trade,
Yep.
and my passion is coaching MMA primarily. I've coached two world champions in MMA over the course of that is what I am. But I really love to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
Mm.
Um, but the thing I know about business, and I think you're understanding this right now, is that much as we in the ecological approach, we don't separate athlete environment. Well, in a business sense, we can't separate our business from our culture, from our environment, from our methods.
Mm.
Those are all one thing. And so I don't understand the numbers and the money and any of those things. They make me uncomfortable. I don't want to, but I do understand that to have a successful business for as long as we've had, that it starts with those pieces all functioning together and they are
Mm.
not separable. So anything that harms your culture, harms your environment, harms your business. If your methods are not in line with your culture, your environment, it harms your business. And so whatever choices you make on how you run your program, those things have to be aligned. They are not separable
Mm.
any more than you separate athlete environment.
Yeah, that's
So
wonderful.
that's
That's
my
gold. Mm.
ecological approach to business.
I love it. I love it. Yes, 100% true. And I think that that's something that as my business grows, and hopefully I will start to be able to put things in place where uh, I'm not the person for everything. I look forward to that day
Well, I'll
because,
tell you this: I don't know the time frame, but about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, we moved into our current facility. We have a very large facility, and we didn't know anything about running a business,
mm,
and we didn't have a kids program. We didn't have uh, let's. It's probably closer to 18 years now. We didn't have systems in place. We didn't know what we were doing. But much like you are positioned to help people learn how to run kids programs, we
mm,
had to find someone that knew how to run a business. And so that's what we did. And so
yeah,
we grabbed the credit cards and we went to seminars and we hired consultants to help us learn to run a business
yeah,
because just building it now being a social media person like you are and things, I think that helps a lot. But this is before those things even existed.
yeah, yeah,
So it's at some point you will probably consult with someone that understands how to run a business.
yeah. And I think that that's something I think I may have even done a post on it in the last week where I said something along the lines of you can't be perfect at everything. And I think that that's something that's really important because I talked about that from a coaching perspective where, okay, my thing is I understand child development. I understand how kids
Right.
learn. I understand how to interact. I understand behavior management. That's my specialty. CLA is not my specialty. And I can openly
Right.
say that. So when I go to plan classes and things like that, my partner he helps me with those things because it's not something that I'm perfect at. I don't think I'm perfect at anything. But they're the things that I reach for help and support from other people because when you try to do all of it and you want to be the person that can do everything all at once, that's when I think burnout starts to happen. And we start to doubt ourselves as coaches as well. So that's what I've taken from a coaching perspective. Now I just need to apply it to myself as an actual business perspective, which is
Right.
what you're
Well,
saying there.
extend that even further. You're also, you can't be the plumber when the
Mm,
toilet clogs up, and you can't be the electrician. You can't be the marketing director. Like at first, we have to be those things.
mm,
Our first business mentor said that he made a list and he said, you either have to do these things or you have to pay someone to do them, but they have to get done.
yeah,
And over time, you try and get more of those off your plate. And like you were saying, when I first really wanted to understand how to apply the CLA at the next level, one thing I did was I dove into everything I could. But I also was very lucky that everyone I reached out to was willing to help me,
yeah,
and part of it is because people like MMA and I have some names that I could drop. Um, but like Greg is a good example. Scotty Sivright is a good example. Like I could list a lot of people like that just helped me along the way that never said no when I asked them a question.
yeah.
And I have now hopefully put myself in a position. I've done a lot of podcasts recently that are getting a lot of viewership, and people are reaching out to me, and I'm trying to just pay that forward. And I think that, I know we all have to help each other, I think, move this forward.
100%.
Because we can't do it ourselves because we
Mm,
can't all be experts at everything.
yeah.
So
I,
yeah, so reach out to
yeah.
people.
And I think that that's something that I have found is that uh, the people who are, on social media in CLA or, that kind of thing, they're so open with the knowledge that they're happy to share. Like people are just excited to show a different way of being able to do things. That everyone that I've approached has been so kind with their time. Like Greg is so generous with his time to be able to
Yes.
just share the knowledge that he has in the hopes that it just helps people. And even people who have sent me messages are like, oh, I was talking to Greg in 2020 or something like that. And he just gave me so much of his time. And I think that that's something that's really cool about what's going on at the moment with CLA is that no one's claiming to have all of the answers and no one's claiming to be the expert of it. Everyone's just like, hey, I've done this and this is really working, or this is really cool and I like this. And they're all coming together and just having a collective conversation about how jiu-jitsu can be taught in a live environment. And I love that.
Yeah, I think most of us, I don't know what your background in jujitsu is, but most of
Mm.
us learned, I'll put learned in quotes, how to coach because that's how we were coached.
Yes.
And I think the people that are looking into the ecological approach, that are looking into the constraints-led approach and these different things are going down these new paths. And none of us have all the answers. And I think it takes years and years and years, and none of us can do that on our own.
Mm.
So I think the collective has to experiment and fail. It's almost like you know, it is a very scientific idea, right? Aliveness and alive training is the scientific method.
Yeah.
And so just like science is best when it's open sourced, when people are sharing and working with each other, I think that we are approaching this in a very similar way.
Yeah.
And the more we open source it, now people should make money and will make money, and I'm happy to support that. I want them to do that. Um, Either with their gyms being successful or products or things like that. I love that.
Mm.
But the more we can open source this with each other, the more we can push it forward. Because I think most of us would sincerely say that the reason we are doing all this work is for our students.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the right reasons that should be at the heart of why you're doing something. And
I
I
think so.
think without going too much into it, it can get a little bit lost along the way with you know different people and different personalities and things within this space. But overall, I think everyone is collectively trying to do the same thing. Now,
I think so.
my computer's going to shut off again in about a minute 40 because we've been at it for like almost an hour, which is actually more than an hour, which is fantastic.
Okay.
So, before we finish, how can people find you, Adam? How can they interact with you to get your wealth of knowledge?
Hopefully, you don't hear my dog squeaking. Uh, Find me on Instagram. I can't even tell you what that my Instagram hand. Oh, my Instagram is Adam Singer SBG. My dog is
Beautiful.
getting mad at me. So, Adam Singer SBG. Send me a message. I've been getting a ton of messages with people um, looking for help, looking for assistance, recommendations on books and people to talk to. I'm trying to take some of the load off of Greg. And so, if I could help, because at some point, Greg is not going to be able to help everyone anymore. Like
Yeah.
his team, if he has his way, he's going to have so many people coming to him to train. He won't have time to do all this. So I'm trying to take some of that off his plate if I can.
Yeah.
So just reach out to me on Instagram. I'm happy to help.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Adam. You were very generous with
Thank
your
you.
time and being able to chat about everything. And I think we have more to chat about, to be honest. So I'd love to
For
catch up
sure.
again.
For sure. Whenever you want to. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam. Have a lovely rest of your night.